And now for more on today's Bank of Korea's decision, we're joined today by Professor Shin Se-don, professor at the Division of Business Economics at Sookmyung Women's University. Professor Shin, thanks for coming on today.
Good morning.
So the Bank of Korea has decided to raise its benchmark interest rate for the second month in a row. And even though many had expected the rate to remain unchanged, what's behind today's decision?
Well, it was quite a surprise because majority of the people in the market and in the schools have expected that the Bank of Korea will hold the rate at the current level. And the reason that most people believed, the Bank of Korea hold the rate is because inflation has been coming down quite significantly for the month of June and July. So everybody expected that, but the Bank of Korea this morning, decided to raise it by 25 basis points. I think one of the critical reasons behind that is housing price. The government, including the Bank of Korea, are quite sensitive about the housing prices, and they probably believe that that is because of interest rate in Korea has been too low. So the reason policy decision behind this 25 basis point hike, I think most important reason is they are decided to calm down housing prices, and if that policy is holding together throughout the year, I think we should have expected even more rate hikes, down the road in 2026.
Right. So like you mentioned, a lot of analysts expect the bank to raise rates once more over the next 6 months. How realistic is this, and what factors do you think could determine the Bank of Korea to raise rates once again?
As I said, the Bank of Korea has been traditionally thinking about inflation on the one hand and on the other, economic growth, but the economic growth has been so fantastic year 2026. So they don't have to worry about the risk of economic slowdown caused by rate hikes. So with this, economic growth rate over 3.5% expected this year, I think they don't have to worry about slowing economy. So they only have to worry about inflation, especially housing prices. So now it's quite clear that the Bank of Korea will raise the rate one more time. And that I think is 100% possible, and possibly two rate hikes by the end of this year. So I think this morning, the policy direction of the Bank of Korea has been very clear. They don't worry about economic slowdown. They don't worry about, the people who are not able to pay the interest rates, but they only care about inflation and also the housing price. That, I think, has become very clear.
Right. And Nvidia last night announced its revenue in the second quarter more than doubled to nearly $100 billion. What does this suggest about the global demand for AI chips, and how significant are these results for the Korean stock market, especially for Samsung Electronics and SK hynix?
Yeah, Nvidia second quarter sales grew more than 100%. And if you look at specific data, the operational, branch of Nvidia, the sector that, the Samsung and Hynix are selling their chips to Nvidia mostly is data centers. And data centers sales has grown 117%, so even higher than Nvidia sales. So looking at sales performances of the Nvidia second quarter, we should probably say that the sales expectation of Samsung and Hynix down the road to 2026 and 2027 are even better and even rosier than we would have thought prior to this report. So I think the future for Samsung and the Hynix economic activity, I think has become very good, so that we could expect even higher prices of those two, the chip makers.
I see. And a lot of attention is also focused on Federal Reserve Chair Kevin Warsh's speech later this week at the Jackson Hole Symposium. What should we be watching for, particularly in terms of his outlook for inflation and interest rates?
Many people in Wall Street are worrying about, new chairman because he said at the outset, right, that he just, he just threw out the forward guidance. Forward guidance has been the key policy direction for the Federal Reserve for the last, I think, a few years. But Kevin Warsh thrown it away. So, the people in the market are almost chaotic because they could not expect what the Fed's movement will be in the future. This weekend in the meeting, I think he would not say anything about interest rate policy. He would not say anything about monetary policy because his direction, his philosophy is not talking about Federal Reserve policy and interest direction. So, the only thing he will mention about at the meeting is about task forces. 5 task forces he mentioned and promised during the interviews, and especially how to change the data, compilations in monetary policy. So his main concern at the meeting is about the task forces, and nobody is pretty much, interested about his explanations about task forces. So this, August meeting at the Jacksonville is going to be something of a disappointing, after this weekend.
I see. I guess we'll have to keep a close eye on that speech. All right, Professor Shin, thank you so much for coming on today. We appreciate it.
Okay, my pleasure.